Before I open to our audience this evening, I like to take these, what can sometimes be termed talk shops, and get to tangible solutions. So before I open to the audience, I'm going to ask you each for a solution for the coming year for women in your environment. And Precious, it can be around the Motsepe Foundation. I mean, you've already spoken to a lot of the strategies that you are embarking on. But perhaps just refine it to one key point that other people in this room can also take back into their companies and institute that change.
Well, I think mentorship is key. And it doesn't have to be a structured one-on-one every month kind of meeting. I've had different mentors in my life. Some of them don't even know they were my mentors, you know. I think it really helps. You feel people understand you, they've been through what you're going through and can give you advice. But having said that, you know, women mentors are great. Try and also get men mentors because they bring in a different perspective. They help you understand the, you know, what goes on in the workplace from their perspective, and it gives you an advantage.
I think that's very, very important. Don't underestimate men as mentors out there. Futhi.
I think from your own perspective as a woman, it's very important to invest in your own development, which means within the organization, speak out about where you want to be, and then find the people that are going to help you to get to that position. And secondly, we tend to do a lot of training. One of the greatest lessons is still experiencing, which means going with somebody who, for instance, what I do with my mentees, because I sometimes don't have time to go around, is if I go somewhere, you let them experience that environment. And from a business perspective now, when we talk about growth to significant position, is also allowing yourself to go out of your comfort zone, which means Johannesburg, as we know that Africa is now the world for us. Take that position in Nigeria if it opens. Take that position in Ghana. Go out there and lead in order to allow your spaces and be the first one that went there and then create more chances.
Just going back to what you said on speaking out, I was recently chatting to Shamil Yusuf, who's the CEO of Vodacom, and he says that one of the reasons that he has been successful is because he's a loudmouth. So to your point. Monhla.
There's no better MBA than the opportunity to have in your own company. And secondly, you can never become good at anything if you do not take the opportunity to practice it. It's practice, practice, practice. And if there's one thing I can leave you with, if you have any doubt about whether you are in the right position to stick around or to practice more, there are people like me. I feel there is a chance for this country if I can help you stay and get smarter and get the opportunity to practice so that you can be able to come back being a little bit of an expert in what you do and a comfortable leader to do remarkable things for us.
Let's open to the audience, and again, if I can just refer to, I've got a question. I've got 2 roving mics, so just put up your hand. Thank you very much. If you can stand, just for camera purposes. Thank you.
Good evening.
Speak into the mic.
Oh, sorry. Good evening to our guests and good evening to the ladies. I'm a 20-year-old and I'm still in varsity. I'm doing my final year. What I've found is that when you approach people regarding, this is a stage where as you go and look for internships and look for opportunities, what I've found is that you get into that space. However, though, there will be males that look at you in a very profane manner and think to themselves, you look like good meat. How do you look past that, and how do you stand your ground and say, without me disrespecting you and taking away the opportunities that you might present to me, this is what I'm about and this is what I have to offer to you? How do you, if you've experienced that, how did you manage that? And I've also found that having male mentors, because I also have a couple of male mentors, is that there's certain issues that I cannot relate with them to. So how do you move past that and find female mentors that will help you accomplish your goals?
A difficult question, and I think it really is. All three of you are going to have to dig deep on this one.
The doctor.
Let's start with the doctor, but you're not getting out of the scooty, and nor are you, Monica.
Oh gosh, yeah. You know, I think that's a difficult one, particularly when it comes to how, I don't know if you saw the article in the papers this weekend. They were talking about lookism.
Yes.
You know, and that's we unfortunately are continuously faced with in the workplace. I grew up in the township, and just to go to the shops, you'd have people whistling at you all the way and all the way back home. So that's been there. And how have I learned to cope with it? I think I've firstly largely learned to ignore it and keep focused to where I'm going. And I've also gravitated to those people who I knew respected me for who I was, without, you know, how do you look, yeah, that kind of thing. And as to the male and female mentor things, I think what I was trying to say is try and find the balance, because it gives you the whole picture. You don't end up just with what is referred to as the pink ghetto. You also have a male perspective, so that you can be a more balanced leader who understands your male workers as much as you do understand your female workers. So it's just about getting a different perspective.
Well, I think that thing of being a woman is something that you can't avoid, and of being beautiful or whatever they think you are. It really is going to be a problem that stays with us. What is more important is really to define yourself and persist on what you want, rather than being taken one direction, because there are no shortcuts. So this might look like it's going to be a shortcut, and it's going to be a nightmare, believe me. So I think that's just how we've dealt with it. And there are some things that you study, for an example, in an organization. Unfortunately, you do have to make sure that, you know, the cleavage is not out there, you know, in the office. Keep it to some other time. And it's an unfortunate thing, but we do have to manage those things, you know, and your professionalism. When the party ends, try not be the last one to leave, because the conversations are saying she might be needing something, meanwhile you are just having fun. So I do have the same conversation with my daughter, because she's 17, and I have to tell her, honey, this is the world. It's not the one you are creating, it's there. And you need to understand it and play your game around it. So.
I think you both answered so well, and I was just imagine a world in the worst extreme, where nobody thinks that you are a looker. I'm glad you all laughed, because the question is being asked by 20-year-olds, and the phrase I've just made is a phrase of a woman, a grown-up woman who says, look at the world, what would life be if men didn't love us? It would be difficult. But when a young woman asks a question, which is laden by a lot of values in it, and they've answered it very well, all you wish for is to remind her that you are asking it because in terms of your own values, you are not comfortable with it. And therefore, when your instinct says this is not right, if you look the other side, there will be a door that is right. And it will be a man who treats you in the greatest ways. But for some other girl, they might just find out that is attractive. There would be a girl who likes to show cleavage every day because she feels so good showing it. Because we all differ, even as women. But it is when your body tells you, this one is not for me, it's not correct. Follow that. And you'll find out that there is another big guy, CEO, male, who will give me the right environment for that mentorship? It mustn't make you think that all men are like that.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm Shirley Zinn from Shirley Zinn Consulting. And I am so inspired by these ladies and their stories this evening. Thank you very much. My question really is about gender mainstreaming and the importance of the legislative framework that we've put in place. We've had the Employment Equity Act, we've had the Black Economic Empowerment Codes, and we are soon to have the Women's Empowerment and Gender Equality Bill that will be promulgated, which is very exciting because it means that we can look forward to 50% of women in decision-making positions in our organizations, in our country. I'd like to know what your view is on that. Thank you.
Shall we start? Let's move it around. Futi, you pick this one up.
Well, I think the power of the legislations have really helped us to propel us to a certain direction. And it has had some effect, even though it's not that desirable. So then it really means we need to collaborate between the government, the private sector, and civil society in terms of driving the issues around women. Because legislation alone will not change how society behaves. So that's work in progress. And we need to start even at our own homes, where you raise a boy and a girl, that he mustn't just sit there and think she'll do all the dishes. You know, he's gonna also be his turn. And also just how, because I think that's the problems that we have, that we still have society and we still have an environment that stereotypes women to an extent that no amount of legislation can drive that. So I just think collaboration will take us, and our forcefulness in also trying to challenge the status quo.
Are you embracing the legislation, Montla?
Absolutely. I mean, we've got to attack the challenge in various ways. It can't just be one. But the most important one, as Futi is saying, is what we do once the door is open as individual women, to make sure that the door doesn't ever close, or that we never faced with such an embarrassing scenario where Parliament has got to legislate to get our corporates to believe that their daughters can actually be managers. I mean, it's so sad because we're talking about fathers, brothers, husbands being dragged by law to say that their daughters can be that. So what we do once we are in the corporates and once we are in the businesses, to ensure that we just instill the fact that we can make a difference and that they can't question another girl, is the other side of the coin to the legislation. We should welcome it to the, it's just embarrassing, we should welcome it, but for every door that opens for every girl or for every woman, the question is, what do we do with it to make sure that the results impact our society and our progression as human beings in a positive way than negatively, so that we don't have to repeat the same legislative arguments about is it implementable, is it this, but simply because what we do once we are in.
Futi made the statement that it goes back to the home. You've got 3 boys. Yeah. What do you do differently with them?
Well, that's why I said to you in the beginning that for me, it's about training my boys to understand that they're going to grow up in a world where girls can compete equally with them and that they will respect them. And I don't compromise on that. I love my boys dearly, and I see my role as helping them to grow in a world where men and women are equal. But you know, we've had so many policies and we've had so much legislation, and we know that there's still this huge gender gap that we have. And again, I want to reiterate that until we get our leadership to put the money where the mouth is, we are going to make very, very little progress. And that's why for me, The Department of Women and Children and People with Disabilities is important, but without getting Treasury to support the goals that our government has in terms of closing the gender gap, we will be talking like this in the next 20 years, and that will be very, very sad.
So next time we need to invite Lesetja Kganyago.
Absolutely. We actually invited
It'll be
them,
you three
yes.
and Lesetja.
Absolutely. They need, yeah.
We've got another question from the floor.
Good evening, ladies. My name's Kilewugile. I'm also a student at WITS. My question really lies in why we're not there yet. I mean, I feel like there's this benchmark that we set for ourselves as women. That benchmark is what males have accomplished. So every woman is trying to get to that point, you know, the first female CEO or the first female billionaire. And, you know, you guys spoke about, you know, waiting for those doors to be open for you. Why can't we just open our own doors? I want to know why we're not there yet, you know, creating new industries for ourselves.
Impatience of youth. Which is a good thing.
It is.
Embrace it.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think for me, you have to define success for yourself. You have to be comfortable with your own personal successes. For me, my success was defined by getting into university, graduating as a doctor, moving on to change my career and do something else. You know, I could have had a different trajectory, but I did it my way. So yes, it's important that we open those doors, we step in, and as Cheryl says, we sit at the table and we take up responsibility. But I think you need to start to define success in your own terms.
It's also about making your own rules.
Yes.
And being satisfied with the rules of the game that you put forward. Got another question from the front, thank you.
It's Snare from PPC. I have a question around really understand what the government is doing in terms of legislation and putting in place, you know, measures and policies that sort of force or businesses to align with the transformation agenda, etc. However, there's a myth, and I'm a victim of this, and I know there's a lot of women that are victims of situations where you apply for a job, you get a job, but once you are at the job, your male counterparts keep reminding you that the reason why you're here is because of the affirmative action and the fact that the business needed to, you know, get their ratings in terms of BEE, etc. And with that, I find that some of the women, you find a woman that will be discouraged by it and stop performing, and then you find a woman who's the other extreme who then decides to perform, not for the sake of performing and understanding their role, but to prove a point. So how do you strike a balance, and what would your advice be for those types of women? How do you find a balance or the middle ground so that you are not affected negatively by the comments and the myths and the perceptions? At the same time, how, you know, not go to the other extreme where you find yourself doing things and performing for the sake of proving a point to your male counterparts?
Futhi?
Well, that's a very interesting question. From my perspective, I was very excited to have an opportunity to be empowered because I felt I was prepared and I was ready and I could do it. And once the opportunity presented itself, I embraced it. But the thing is that once you get there, you cannot sit and then be empowered. You have to get on with it and move on to the next level. So you must never feel bad about the opportunity. You know, when we play golf and then the ladies are put there, then sometimes the men say to you, why don't you just take your partner? You know, and you say, no, I enjoy empowerment. And you must enjoy it because it's an opportunity that's presented to you and you must use it effectively to get yourself right to the top, because that empowerment is talking about opening the door which was previously shut. So just ignore them and say, I'm happy with that. At least now I'm in.
I've
And
got two more questions if you'd like to add before we go to the next question.
And importantly, the job environment is highly competitive. And from the beginning, when they employed you, there was always a job description. And it said that once you deliver this, you earn a salary. And once you exceed it, you earn a bonus. Whatever people say, they are competing. Focus on the contract you signed. There's a performance agreement. It tells you what you must exceed to follow that to the letter and exceed all expectations. You will be laughing, looking at them, as empowered as you are, saying ha 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 until they report to you. Don't worry about it.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Helen Nicholson from the Networking Company. Thank you, everyone, for your inspiring comments. I have a comment and a question. I have 16-year-old identical twin daughters, and they're at a girls' school, and I was at a talk by the headmistress of the school the other day, and she said that she's observing a new trend in girls that are matriculating out of this particular school, and she said she sees it as more widespread, that girls are looking at our generation of mothers and are seeing us as a very stressed generation. And she said that she increasingly sees a lot of the girls saying that they want to be stay-at-home moms and they want to actually find rich husbands, and they don't want what we have because they see the stresses that come with it. And it's obviously it's a very worrying trend for all of us who fought quite hard for the opportunities that we have. So I just wondered what your comments were around that.
Montla wants to say that's terrifying. Do
Yeah.
you want to disclose the school?
It's true. Unfortunately, it's
Montla.
It's unfortunately true.
Yes.
One of the biggest opportunities that our husbands in the scenario that you're talking about have is that the wife and the children and everybody else have allowed dad to work. So the bulk of his time he's spending in the corporate life. Mommy, it looks like we like mommy relax and not being able to work. It's slightly unfair because it's not capitalizing on the skills that are there. But it's unfortunate our children are learning to realize that the environment is so harsh, that we are stressed. And part of wanting to have a larger number that creates a different culture is to make sure that the twins can be able to go to work and be able to be at home, hopefully without showing the level of stress that the doctors will tell you we keep showing as mothers. And I don't think mothers like the fact that they leave their children at school and she's still crying and they're running to the office. But at the end of the day, you live only once and you leave a mark only during that time. Let's find a conversation with our children to define what is happening to us today so that they don't think that defines who they are in the future. To get access.
We're out of
to all these
time,
things.
but I've got one question, and it's a selfish question for those members of our audience who are at WITS, who are studying. What would you each say to your 22-year-old self? Precious. Just a short, what would be the one thing you would say right now if you were looking back at your 22-year-old self?
I'd probably say you're responsible for your own destiny. Go for it.
Futhi?
I'll probably say that you need to work hard, be dedicated, and also enjoy what you do and have a sense of humor.
Montla?
Well, go and have fun, kiddo, because until you're about 40, all you do is gather tools. You'll figure out how to use all of them when you're an adult.
Thank you so much for being such an interactive audience. That brings us to the conclusion of the Leading Women debate here on CNBC Africa. A special thanks to my esteemed panelists. Thank you so much for letting us get to know the real you, Precious, Futhi, and Montla. Until next time.